Representatives from Russia and Ukraine, along with French and German officials, have held talks in Paris amid rising tensions between Moscow and Kiev. The talks are the latest diplomatic efforts to try and avert conflict between the two countries. The meeting is implementing the so-called Normandy format that's previously been used to restore relations between Ukraine and Russia following its annexation of Crimea in 2015. France has called for more dialogue to de-escalate tensions. President Macron is due to speak to President Putin by phone on Friday. Russia denies any plans for military aggression towards Ukraine, despite a massive troop build-up along the country's borders. Well, if talks fail and Russia does invade Ukraine, US President Biden says he'll consider personal sanctions against President Putin. In a rare move, the measures could target the Russian leader's personal assets. The UK has also threatened direct action against Putin, with Britain's Foreign Secretary Liz Truss saying that she wouldn't rule out personal sanctions. But Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov hit back at talk of sanctions, saying that the West is in a military frenzy.
As for the sanctions, we see that our Western colleagues, without exaggeration, are in some kind of military frenzy. They only talk about one thing: we will punish you, you will attack, we will punish you and save Ukraine. It won't be pretty. Well, you are reading all these hysterical statements which the West now uses to phrase its position.
Well, those key talks are taking place in Paris, and they're tracking the latest developments for us from the French capital is our Russia analyst, Galina Polinskaya. Galina, good to see you. We do understand now that Russia has now received a written response from the United States. What more can you tell us about that?
Hello, Helen. Well, actually, yes, the U.S. ambassador, as all the Russian news agencies are reporting, brought this written answer to the Russian Foreign Ministry, and it is the answer that Russia has been asking for and is waiting for, the answer to its security demands, one of which is to guarantee that Ukraine will never be a part of NATO and that NATO will stop its expansion eastwards, something which has been already defined by the U.S. and NATO as non-starters. So there will be some other answers, and Russia will analyze them. And today the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov addressed the Russian upper house of parliament, Duma, and once again reminded that Russia will take necessary measures if it does not receive a constructive response from the US and NATO to its proposal for security guarantees. And he spoke about provocative military maneuvers near Russia's borders and about drawing Kyiv's regime into the NATO. And of course, we've heard other tough comments today in Russia just before this answer was received. One of them came from the ruling United Russia Party, who suggested to propose military means to the separatist regions in the east of Ukraine. And the Kremlin's spokesperson, the spokesman of Vladimir Putin, also commented the suggestion about personal sanctions against the Russian president. He said that they will be not painful, but that they will be politically destructive.
All right, Galina, meanwhile, there in Paris where you are, I mean, it is worth pointing out for the first time in a long time, we have had Russia and Ukraine in the same room at the same table. So how have those talks been progressing?
Yeah, I'm standing right now at the residence of the Russian ambassador in Paris, and we are waiting for a press conference of the Russian participant, Dmitry Kozak, the deputy chief of staff of the Russian president, who takes part in those talks from the Russian side. And the talks are taking much more time than it was expected. And from what we know, the sides and those sides represent Ukraine, Russia, Germany, and France could discuss the humanitarian issues in the separatist regions in the east of Ukraine, as well as a ceasefire control mechanism. It was Ukraine who suggested to create such a mechanism and to involve Germany and France into controlling the ceasefire. According to the Kremlin, Russia is expected to raise its concerns about the state of affairs on the line of contact in Donbass. And of course, there is another question of bringing the Normandy format talks on the upper level, a higher level, and France and Germany are really advocating for that. And tomorrow, as you've mentioned, Mr. Macron, the French president, will talk with Vladimir Putin. He will talk about the de-escalation and about the highest priority of this Normandy format talks and in this process of de-escalation.
All right, Galina Polanskaya in Paris, where those four-way Normandy format talks are taking place. Galina, thanks so much. Well, while talks take place in Paris, the EU is watching how events unfold as the bloc considers its own sanctions. Let's head over now to our correspondent Stefan Grobe, who is standing by for us in Brussels. Stefan, good to see you. European countries claim that they are united in their response should there be a Russian incursion. The fact of the matter is, of course, as you are aware, that it's probably been a little bit trickier for them to actually come to a consensus. But how is that all playing out diplomatically with Russia?
Good evening, Helen. Well, we earlier, just a short while ago, sat down with the Russian ambassador to the European Union, Vladimir Chichov, in an exclusive Euronews interview. And you wouldn't know that there is a major international crisis brewing by listening to the ambassador, who was very relaxed and very calm. The talk about an imminent armed conflict comes from those who try to disseminate disinformation, he said. So he was blaming basically NATO and the West. His country will not go down a path of war, he said. Take a listen.
Russia has no plans to invade either Ukraine or any other country. It's a bluff created not in Russia, but in those countries that are now spreading this hysterical message, I would say, across Europe and the world.
There was an almost surreal moment in the interview when he excluded a nuclear war after having said that every option is on the table. Chichov then talked about Russia's national security, and he heavily criticized NATO for basically ignoring his country's safety and security needs for many, many years. There have been 5 waves of NATO eastward expansion over the years, according to Chichov. As a result, NATO has gotten closer to Russia, and it's not that Russia has gotten closer to NATO. Helena?
Well, look, Stefan, on the other side, I mean, we also heard from US President Joe Biden, who said that there could be personal sanctions on the Russian President Vladimir Putin himself. I'm wondering, is that something that the EU could get on board with?
Well, it certainly depends on who you ask. The whole issue of sanctions has so far divided certainly the European Union, and whether you can punish Putin personally without taking into account his government and the Russian economy. That is, for some people here in Brussels, a bit of a stretch. What does that actually mean? Are you telling Putin he cannot board a Western plane anymore, or travel to the United States, or buy real estate on the French Riviera? Putin alone is not the issue here. It's certainly what is necessary is certainly a wider set of sanctions, and Putin personally is certainly only one tiny little aspect of the whole scheme.